This rose is at its best. It's got a lovely scent as well. It's just sort of on the square. I pruned it last year. It's got a lovely scent. An Englishman's home is his castle, I think is the expression, isn't it? Well, I'm British, in fact. I'm half English and half Scottish. Oh, I say. Candle on the go. Waste not one lot. Copper kettle. Little backyard. Well, lucky me. Eh? Little backyard. It's all right. Which that door doesn't slam. Sun. Sun, 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 sun. This thing, it's sort of like a hollyhock. Isn't it? Amazing. It's terrific. Yes, well, it's not mine. I'm only renting, so there we go. And I'm still here. So, there we are. Love, love, love. Right? Love is the answer. I absolutely emote about the fact that here I am at 65 years old, and I just feel I've done so little of real value in this world. But what about my Carthusian monks after St. Bruno, whose pivotal date is about 1084, the year 1084. And they're an entirely enclosed order and they pray. Likewise for the Poor Clares, St. Francis and the Poor Clares. His dates are 1182 to 1226 or 26. He died at the age of 44. So the Poor Clares are an entirely enclosed order. They pray. Well, I consider my life a prayer, quite frankly. My whole life. What has it achieved? That's the tricky bit. To reconcile. I have this wonderful faith, granted through my life, experiences, if you like. The tragedy of my son committing suicide being the major one in my life. And then 32 years later, here I am. That's when I met my former wife. My son, in fact, was born in 92, not 1990, but anyway. And he'd be 30 this year, but he committed suicide at the age of 18. Well, that's just, for me, a massive matter. Being very home, family-oriented sort of chap. And instead, off I went round the world, actually, having fought in the courts in England for 5 or 6 years, took it to the High Court twice myself, and to the European Commission of Human Rights. Fat chance. Absolutely no justice there. They wouldn't listen, the authorities. My former wife had been sexually abused. Bang! There's a young life growing up. She was a very good mother earlier on, breastfed and caring and, all that sort of stuff. And then I was booted out. It was everything was my fault. The woman's called in denial, and they've got this sort of stuff locked away. There's a lot of it about this blasted sexual abuse within close relations, families and cousins and uncles and all that stuff. And, of course, the church, too, I'm afraid. Yet again, I met someone just chatting at the bus stop just recently, and his sister had been, from Glasgow somewhere, but abused by, obviously, a Roman Catholic priest, for heaven's sake. So, the church has been appalling at it, just trying to cover this stuff up. I think they're just about beginning to recognise that in the longer term, they have to say mea culpa. It's actually mea culpa, maxima mea culpa. woe is me, I'm at fault. Don't look to the other person's fault. So this question of love, prayer, and how it expresses itself in the world. Well, on the face of things, one might say a life of contemplative prayer, sort of entirely not in touch with the world at all, is a very exceptional calling. I'm in the world. I'm having all this blasted grief from the neighbours, for heaven's sake. I'm not going to do a repeat performance of it. The blasted fellow kicked my door in yesterday. And the police are doing virtually nothing, quite frankly. Anyway, there we are. I'm not going to dwell on that. They're the sad ones. I pity the poor children, I'm afraid, growing up in that family. And this blasted, again, I'm not even going to say her nationality, but this blasted woman is literally cavorting outside my window. There's a court order against me, because there we are. I must be a bad man then, mustn't I? I don't know why. I mean, I suppose one might just say, well, it's all my fault that this injustice seems to follow me wherever I go. It must be my fault, mustn't it? I mean, that would be a sort of logical conclusion, perhaps. And I try so hard to love the world. Gee! I've just been having a bit of a wander through some of my old photographs, and I had this beautiful Land Rover. It's an expensive thing, brand new in fact, TD5, long wheelbase, I could sleep in the back, but I had money, and I tried to kind of work in the townships out there in South Africa. The three around Cape Town are called Gugulethu, Nyanga, and Khayelitsha. It's a sort of well-known one. The big one in Johannesburg is Soweto, southwestern township. And, you know, there are any number of impoverished black people all over the show. In rural areas, it's sort of different. You know, you see these little black bubbakins with bare feet and little raggedy clothes and big smiley faces. They're so happy. Unfortunately, in the cities, it can be awful. And I gather now in South Africa, for instance, it's just this Magnificat. There's the male voice and then the female, and it's just a loop. 5 hours looping on. I know the Latin. It's in Latin, of course. But they're setting upon people from other black nations who are sort of have sought refuge, if you like, in South Africa. So just because you're black doesn't mean you're brothers, as it were. I mean, from my perspective as a Christian, we're all brothers and sisters, and certainly anyone who professes a love of God through Christ just automatically is either my brother or my sister. But in fact, the way I see it is that potentially, especially because of Saul Paul, who was converted in 3 days, so each human being, and so no death penalty. If you're on death row, that's wrong. There should be, no man should take another man's life judicially. Yes, people commit awful crimes and ought to perhaps be locked up, possibly for the whole of the rest of their lives and review, but there ought to be the avenue and possibility of redemption within a prison system. That's my view on that matter, and absolutely no death penalty. Something which actually Britain gets right, in my view. I think it was abolished in 1967, the death penalty. There were just too many cases where it was false, and once you've executed someone, you can't exactly bring them back, can you? But just the idea that one human being is empowered through the state to kill another, I mean, I think that's completely wrong. So how does this love express itself? Well, for me, the absolutely guiding principle of my life is thy will be done. So not my will, it's right there at the beginning of the Lord's Prayer, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. So that then enjoins us to seek to put our will into God's will, and then that's fine. That is what it should be. And then when you're fulfilling God's will, I'm afraid I'm sensitive to noises at the moment. They're throwing stones and all sorts. Flower bomb my door and egged the windows twice. I just cleaned them. Bastard well did it again. So I read in that passage, love, this morning, Romans chapter 12. And that is the answer. You must love those who hate you. That is Christ's teaching. That's it. So that is a guide in one's personal life, how you conduct yourself. And then this question of thy will be done. God's will, that is, be done. Well, my faith says to me that be still and know that I'm God, and that God will guide me and show me and empower me as and when the time is right, and I'm right for that matter, that I'm sufficiently whatever mature enough, if you like, wise enough even, possibly, to be able to really do something of real worth in this world. So in the meantime, this is sort of me rehearsing, actually. It's very soothing, this. I left it on all night the other night. It's still going. I was up at sort of 1, 2, and of course it's 5 hours, so it was still going at 6 in the morning, 5, 6, I heard it. I'd sort of doze and then half awake and hear this going. It's very just contemplative, I think, would be an appropriate description. So that's, as far as I can see, the best I can offer this world at present. I absolutely do not feel that I'm doing anything like that of which I'm capable. Pretty much living this, apart from this blasted nonsense from the neighbours, but my only guests this morning were 2 policemen and a policewoman at my Christian meeting from 11 to 12. They weren't impressed when I started giving them a bit of a sermon. Oh, no, we've got to go. We've got more important things to do. Truly. I started quoting from the Romans 12. They did listen briefly. So, as ever, with St. Paul, one lives in faith, in hope, and in love. Amen. I'll say amen to that. It's actually a very pleasant day now. There was a drop of rain there, just turned up early. It's quite chilly out here, but I gather down south they're gonna have a bit of a heat wave soon. Right, there we are. Love is the answer. Love, 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 love. Amen.